Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist in Columbus, Georgia, and it is time for the Tea Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. We made it last week of May. Can you believe it? This time continues to pass by so quickly. Hopefully, you all were able to honor your loved ones who made the ultimate sacrifice yesterday on Memorial Day or got a chance to spend time with friends and family. Maybe got a chance to have a day off. But we are here in Mental Health Awareness Month, and this month we have been discussing mental wellness, which we focused on sleep habits in week one. Financial wellness, we discussed fiscal responsibility in week two. Our occupational habits, which is part of occupational wellness, we discussed in week three. And here in week four, we are going to be discussing social wellness, which is right on time since I will be approaching my 30th high school reunion in a couple of weeks. Super excited about that. So, I talk to people a good bit about being social. Um, because I think that a lot of things have happened. One, I think during the pandemic, how we socialize started looking a little different. But also, I think just in general, like depending on your age range and where you fall, like socialization looks different too. So when you're in school and you are in classes with the same people from day to day, week to week, it allows you to create these relationships. You may be in clubs together, you may do sports activities together, you may volunteer together, you may go to the same church together, you may be involved in student government together, right? So there is so many dynamics that almost forces us to engage. When we're kind of like K through 12, your parents may put you in taekwondo or golfing or swimming that allows you to be able to create those relationships. But then as we begin to transition and get older, sometimes it can be really difficult, one, to have that desire, I think, to engage socially. And then also your needs change. So maybe if you're somebody when you were in your 20s, socialization looked like we might have been going out and doing like a lot of people will say that's kind of their club era when they're in their 20s and they're going out and they're having drinks and they're going to parties and kickbacks and um, hanging out and going on these weekend adventures. And then you get to a point where you transition and maybe you start having children or you just get to be more in your career, get married, some of the other things that just kind of life changes, get to a point where you realize you can't be up all night and drinking all the time. And so you shift, and then that changes who the people are that you're engaged with because they may have been people that were because of the situations and environments you were in. Like we're friends because we go to the same school together or we work together. But as that changes, then we don't have anything else that's really anchoring us to maintain this relationship. And so it looks a little different. Or, like, I realized that our interests are no longer similar. And so we've just kind of gone in different directions in our life. And so maybe some of the things that you were interested in before are not things that you're interested in now. And so that shift can be really difficult. Sometimes we move and we're in a new environment. And so we haven't made friends yet. We haven't connected with people yet. So that's a part of it. I think that there are times when we may go through, you might have health issues. God forbid, may have transitional issues, fire, floods, things that happen in your life. A child may have some things going on. Maybe they've had some legal issues or some health issues, caregiving, right? So you're taking care of maybe aging parents. And so these are things that stop you from engaging as much and socializing as much. And so then you come back and realize, like, I don't really fit in the same way. This doesn't feel the same to me as it did. I feel like other people have kind of gone on and their relationships have strengthened, and I'm in a position now where I'm not necessarily as connected. You may have had the loss of a partner, and so that can feel very isolating because they may have potentially been your social engagement. And so as they're not gone, then you really feel that aloneness and isolation. And then you could have also had people that moved away, like your closest people in your life may have moved, or transitioned in some way. Maybe they left, they're coming back, but they won't be back for a while. And so, or maybe they took a job that requires them to do more traveling, and so they're not in town as much. So, whatever the case may be, you find yourself not having whoever that person was, your person may be available. And so, you find yourself not really engaging socially as much. And I know a lot of times as we go through transitions, and this happened during the pandemic, so maybe church was your social outlet, you stopped going to church during the pandemic, you haven't really returned, and so you haven't had those connections anymore. But there's also people who just are a little bit introverted or maybe a little socially anxious, or even socially awkward. And so there's a lot of thinking about whether or not you want to engage socially, and you find yourself kind of being a little avoidant of social engagements because maybe you're not as comfortable socially around people, or maybe there are certain places and situations that aren't as comfortable. Like maybe I'm comfortable around one person, not as comfortable around multiple people. Maybe I've had some negative experiences socially, and so I'm just a little hesitant and reluctant to put myself back out there to try to engage with people. Maybe I'm in situations where people have betrayed me. They said they were my friend only to kind of turn on me, or they just disappeared. I have no idea what even happened in the relationship. And so I'm left kind of questioning things. And so that makes me a little hesitant to get out there and try it again. It definitely, I think, is tough to find friends sometimes for people. So they're like, where am I going to find people, my people? So if I have particular interest in certain things, how do I find other people that have that interest? Maybe my interest is anime. Maybe I like old movies. Maybe I'm a person that's very a creative person. So how do I find these spaces to engage with people? I might be a person that likes to have dialogue about various issues. How do I find people that want to have these conversations that are well versed in a variety of these things? So, whatever the case may be, you may find yourself in a situation right now where your social interactions aren't necessarily where they could be, even if you're a person that's still questioning whether or not you want them to be different, right? But we understand that social wellness means that we're engaging with people, our relationships with people, how we have I think, interconnected, interpersonal, and a dynamic with people over time. And there are some, benefits to having relationships. We do find that there is a correlation between our well being and our healthy, positive relationships, because they add to us a lot of different things. One, they allow us to be able to evaluate ourselves in relation to other people. They give us feedback. Some of you grew up with siblings and you know what it's like to have that immediate feedback. Like, so if you are starting to kind of veer off course, if you will, you have those siblings who will help guide you back in. They're the people that talk to you about how you come across. They give you real time feedback about how you may be engaging, because sometimes we don't have that awareness and insight about how we come across to other people. If I come across a little harsh and brash, if I come across as very accommodating and I tend to be a doormat to people, if I come across as uninterested and not wanting to be bothered, if I come across as not being able to receive constructive feedback about myself, right? So there are a lot of different ways that social engagement gives us more understanding about ourselves because it's a different perspective. So we know that we have bias when it comes to thinking about how we engage sometimes. And that could be a positive bias or it could be a negative bias. However, when other people give us that feedback, it tends to be if they're a healthy person, because I know some of you have had experiences with negative, very critical people, and so they always kind of found some things wrong and blamed you for things. So I don't want you to look at them necessarily as where that feedback would be coming from. But from a healthy person, they're able to see you in a more kind of holistic, objective way that sometimes we're not able to see ourselves from. I think social well being or having those social relationships also influence our mental well being and our physical health. Particularly as we are growing and developing those friendships that you have in your adolescent and your young adulthood are oftentimes a central source of a lot of things, right? Because you may be away from family, or this may be your peer group tends to have more time with you. They may know more intimate parts of you than other people know. And so they're a place of comfort and support. They are a place where you can go when you need to be able to kind of work through things. So even being able to talk through and understand and problem solve, right? So friendships come in a lot of different ways for us, and in particular, if you're not necessarily getting this from home, like that emotional support, like people showing up for you, coming to your events. Oftentimes friends are the ones that are congratulating you when you have an achievement, accomplishment, that they're encouraging you to take those next steps of something that you're feeling a little hesitant about, but even though it's something that you would really like to do. And when we are very satisfied with those relationships, then we tend to be more satisfied with life in general. And I definitely think that having a space where you can share personal things, things that you know won't come back and be thrown in your face, people who truly know you person, that you don't have to put on the mask for, that you can be vulnerable with, like that is definitely associated with higher levels of well-being. We tend to have better habits when we have people in our lives. They tend to be our accountability partners in a lot of ways. We tend to have things to look forward to and things to be joyful about. I always enjoy when I go and hang out with my friends who are like sisters to me. We laugh, we eat, we have a good time, right? And there doesn't have to be an agenda per se of like, oh, they want something or I want something, or we're trying to accomplish anything, as much as it's this interaction in itself. Is where the joy comes from. We tend to take better care of our health when we have supportive and loving relationships in our lives, right? Because what we want to do, we want to show up for people that we care about. I want to be able to be around, to have these moments, to go on these trips, to have these celebrations. Things like birthdays, things like anniversaries, things like graduations, right? When we have people in our lives and we want to strive to reach these goals, so that people can be proud of us, and also that we can contribute positively to their lives. But we also know that just physiologically, our cardiovascular health, our immune health, how we respond in terms of some of our hormones, actually is better when we have healthy social relationships. So there's a lot of good things about it. When we can attach in healthy ways, I've talked to you all a lot about anxious avoidant attachment, insecure attachment, right? So when we do not have safe spaces, people who are trustworthy, people who see us, talk to us, allow us to emotionally develop, love us unconditionally, then it can have a really negative impact in our lives. But when we can have these social relationships, then they can help us with things like being able to respond in healthy ways emotionally when we're dealing with a wide variety of things. It can help us in terms of being able, again, to kind of work through cognitively some of that negative self talk. We've talked a lot about these negative core beliefs that can develop based on our early experiences in life. So when we have these healthy social engagements, then it allows us to be able to kind of check that negative thinking. It allows us to be able to regulate and modulate when we're having difficult times, and we're less likely to be impulsive and self-destructive when we have those safe networks of people who can ground us. And also, we tend to just be more creative and better versions of ourselves when we have that belonging, if you will. We do desire to be connected to people, to have long term, significant relationships, which is why we're impacted so immensely when that we don't have them. It allows us to be able to know that we're not by ourselves, right? And I think that's part of that safety and security that we end up having. So, all that being said, right? So I've given you the hey, here's the why it's important for us to have them. But let's talk about how to create them. Now, I do think, and this may sound a little funny, that in order for us to promote social wellness, we have to first learn how to be comfortable by ourselves. And I know that people are like, well, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? It really doesn't. And here's a few reasons why. One, and this is speaks to why some of us I think are codependent in relationships and allow ourselves to be doormats and people to take advantage of us and mistreat us, and we continue to be involved in relationships with people even though they're not kind to us, right? Because I'm not comfortable being by myself. Like I feel like I need you in this relationship in order for me to be whole, to be happy. I don't have any care and concern about myself. Like I care more about you and what you need. Like I have a hard time even being able to understand and articulate what I need and what's important to me. And so being able to be comfortable being by yourself allows you to be able to have a healthy balance when you are socializing, because we do need to have some time to ourselves. We do need to unplug. For those of us that are introverted extroverts, like you have to have that time away to be able to replenish yourself, to rest, to recuperate in order for you to be able to go back into those social engagements, and allows you to learn how to feel good about you, so that you don't need someone else to affirm you in order for you to recognize your worth and your value. It also will allow you to show up and be a better friend, because oftentimes we'll get in those spaces where I feel like I need this person, or I'm so worried about them leaving me or disappointing them that I don't even allow myself to be fully present in the relationship. So I'm not expressing things, like even simple things like where I want to go eat. Oh, wherever you pick is fine. Whatever we do is fine, right? It doesn't allow you to be able to have input in your relationship. And it teaches this other person out of the experience of having you and your feedback and your different perspective and interests that allows them to be able to grow as well, right? So that's the first thing. Of course, I'm going to tell you all that you need to make sure that you're actually picking healthy people. I think a lot of times, because unfortunately our first relationships are with our families of origin, sometimes we struggle to know what healthy supportive people would look like because our relationships have been conditional. And maybe people have talked to you in ways that were very harsh and abrasive, and so you think that that's what supportive relationships look like. Oh well, people aren't going to be consistent anyway in your life, and so you pick people who really kind of are very similar to folks that you grew up with, and then you don't realize like, oh, there's a whole bunch of other folks out there that don't engage in that way. The people that will call you back when you call them, the people that will show up for you when they say they're going to show up, the people that can talk to you in ways that are respectful and loving and kind, that can give you feedback without it being hurtful, critical, demeaning. They are people who want what's best for you and don't engage in this comparison behavior, or don't feel like they have to minimize your shine in order for them to be able to be who they are. And so you have to take time to figure out what that would look like for you. And I do encourage people to generate a list of requirements. And I do say requirements because there do need to be things that are non negotiable, right? Like somebody treating you in loving, kind, respectful ways, like that shouldn't be negotiable, right? So we can be in an argument and a disagreement and not see things the same way, but I don't have to tear you down in order for us to do that. So, first, pick those things like what's important to you in your social relationships. These can be your friends, these can be your coworkers, these can be people who you may be interested in dating. But whatever it is, making sure that you are not altering the list because you just want to have this certain person in your life. Like, oh, I just really like that person, or I feel like if were friends with this person, I get a lot of access to some things and other people, right? So making sure that you're building a friend circle that is consistent with your values, but also are people that can meet your needs. And how do we get there, right? So having things that you do outside of your friend groups is sometimes a way to do that. So for some people, that may be community service, volunteering. For some people, that may be whatever your hobbies are, that you are gardening or woodworking, or maybe you're a person that's a creative and you sing or you dance, or you create pictures, whatever that is for you. When you already have some of those things in place, then that can allow you to actually create a network, because the first thing you can do is you find groups of people that do those things that you have interest in, hobbies in, community service, right? So I can join a community service organization, because maybe I'm interested in helping older people, maybe I'm interested in helping younger people, maybe I want to address the issues of litter in the community, maybe I'm a person that likes to sew, so I'm going to join a group that, and it may be knitters and people that sew, it could be crochet, it could be a lot of different things in there, that we're spending that time together. But also, as you are thinking about those groups, it will be important for you to have your boundaries, right? Like, how much am I going to be spending time with these different organizations or these online groups? And a lot of times I will tell people, and this is kind of you discerning what your needs are. For some people, you're fine engaging in an online community. Maybe you're a person that likes to have good discourse about interesting topics, religion, it might be political science, it might be psychology, whatever it may be. And so these online groups are opportunities for you to connect. Maybe you are caregiving for someone, maybe you are having some health issues, and these are groups of people who can kind of help you navigate through that. Other people need to have some in person too, right? And I will tell people, if all your engagement is online community, then you need to have at least one space that's in person engagement. That doesn't mean you have to do it every day, but as you're thinking about what that would look like for you, that's going to be a part of your boundaries. How frequently would I like to engage people in person? How much time do I have to devote to a community service organization? What kinds of things am I willing to take on? Right. So a lot of times we're so excited about getting involved, and new blood people come in and they're like, oh, hey, you can do all of these things. The next thing you know, you're overwhelmed because you've taken on all of these things. Or you are allowing people who you have these online communities with to call you or text you, and they're not really respecting your boundaries, and so they're calling you and texting you all throughout the night. So it's just important for you to understand whatever those boundaries are going to be, and this goes back to what your needs are, what your values are, your non-negotiables. Like, that's going to help with the boundary piece. I do think it's going to be important to have a variety of different communication skills. So, active listening is very important. Some people can monopolize a conversation and you won't even have to say anything. You could be a bobblehead doll, just like shaking your head up and down. And for some of you, you like that because you're a little bit more quiet, and a little slower to warm, and maybe you don't have as much to talk about. And so, when someone leads the conversation, like, that makes the work easier for you. But I encourage you to develop your communication skills. You can go online to look at conversation topics. You can become well versed in a particular area and be able to really talk a lot about that, but also become a little less versed but knowledgeable in some small areas. Reading helps a lot with that. Listening to podcasts can help with that. But also, taking classes. Like, there are a lot of different ways we can gain information. But that includes a variety of things, from small talk, the acquaintance level. And a lot of people don't like small talk. They want to dive all deep in. But this is a part of the boundary piece as we're creating this social wellness. Like, I don't need to be talking to everybody about deep stuff that I first meet, because I can have acquaintances on up to close interpersonal relationships, and those should look different. They shouldn't be the same. And so, as I'm working on my social wellness, I need to understand the different degrees, if you will, of relationships. Like, my coworker relationship might look different than my church relationship, which might look different than this relationship I have with people in my community service organization, than people who been my close friends for 10 years, right? So there should be differences in what those relationships look like, and that can kind of help guide you in terms of how you want to work on your communication skills. I think another piece, and I, kind of alluded to this a little last week, some of us have difficulty asking people for help, asking people for things. And that is, that independent, I'll take care of it myself. That way I know it's taken care of. Could be a little bit of control mixed in there, but also some anxiety about like, hey, are people really going to be available to me? Are they going to show up for me? Can they be present for me? Am I going to be a burden on them? So, learning how to be able to accept support from people around you and ask for people. I know it is our tendency to deal with things on our own, and we'll withdraw from people, particularly when we're going through things. And it's not good for our mental wellness, and oftentimes it's not good for our social wellness as well, because again, we're retreating, and we're isolating ourselves. We don't want to see have people think of us as weak or seem like we're monopolizing their time talking about the same stuff. But it is important for us to be able to recognize, one, that people can handle it. Two, that they will give us feedback if they feel like, hey, I'm here to support you, and come on, shout out to mental health. Maybe it would be helpful for you to see someone, a mental health counselor, and talk through some things as well. But also being able to share things, especially our struggles, allows us to be able to create stronger bonds with people. And it does increase our health when we're able to let things go or release things, talk through things, be able to get a better understanding, problem solve, deal with the difficult emotions, right? That emotional regulation piece. And so it's important for us to be able to utilize our support system in those ways. You can absolutely meet people through exercise. So I know a lot of people have a love hate relationship with the gym, or if you are going to yoga classes or Pilates or dance or whatever it may be, and we feel like I don't want to, kind of, how do you talk to these strangers? But again, they're not strangers anymore when I've been in this class for 6 months. So being able to maybe identify one person, you can usually see the people that speak to you, that like when you're not there, they're like, oh, hey, missed you, welcome back, or that you may be paired with for a different, especially if you're in a small group for your physical activity. But that is an absolute great place to be able to meet people, particularly when, again, the groups. I know sometimes it's a little harder when you're working out on your own and you haven't necessarily established those regular people. But even if you're working out on your own, if you're going at the same time, you'll probably notice that there are other people that are going out at the same time as you're going. So take some time and introduce yourself to them, and that may be a way in. It is important for you to be true to who you are when you're creating relationships. I know a lot of us, we do this chameleon thing where we try to blend in with everybody. And so I change who I am when I'm talking to them. My accent will change, what I talk about changes, how I sit, how I dress. But be yourself, right? And you being you allows you, one, to understand that people can love you, and want to engage with you as you, and not that you have to show up with bells and whistles. A lot of times people think like, oh, I have to give people something in order for them to want to engage with me, to be my friend, offer them something, if you will. And so getting in that space of understanding that you're enough and you don't have to offer anyone anything in order for them to want to engage with you. Now, sometimes we do have to, and this goes back to the therapy piece, recognize if there are things interfering with us being able to engage socially. Now, sometimes that is, I'm not taking the best care of myself. And so I can't really hang out and do a lot of stuff because I may have a lot of health issues. I may not be taking care of my physical body. And so, like, I find myself being out of breath. So when people want to go, like, they're like, oh, let's go for a hike. And I'm like, I am not going to be able to make a hike, because it's hard for me to even breathe regularly just walking from the car. Y'all may remember my labored breathing from last week when I had that sinus cold, right? Like, and so being able to understand, like, hey, me not taking care of myself is now affecting my ability to be able to engage with other people. I'm burned out, I'm stressed out because I'm working too many hours. And so I don't even have a lot of off time, downtime. When I do have time, I'm asleep or trying to wash my clothes. So I don't have a lot of balance in any other area of my life. It's going to be very difficult for me to have balance in my social life as well. It may be that you are not engaging in good hygiene, right? And so there's an odor to you. And so people are, and I know that's an uncomfortable topic. Like, we don't want to deal with when the breath isn't fresh, when we are musky, when we have that sweaty smell or mildewy kind of smell to us, right? And so oftentimes, like, when we're not taking care of our personal hygiene, things come out in our pores. And so you'll get feedback from people like, oh, they smell like this every time they're there, and it leaves a scent in the fabric. And so, yeah, you're less likely to be invited to things if you have an odor to you, particularly one that lingers, right? So then and that goes back to me taking good care of myself. Like, am I having those regular dental appointments? And am I having good oral hygiene? Sometimes we have an odor to our breath because we have teeth that need to be attended to. Some of us haven't been to the dentist regularly. And so being able to get the good dental care could be a game changer. Physical activity, right, might be the way for me to begin to establish these relationships. But it may be like, hey, you all are going on a 3 mile hike. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do um, half a mile with you all and half a mile back by myself till I work myself up, right? So it may be the starting. It may be like, hey, I am in a situation where I don't have enough resources to wash my clothes regularly and take, so getting that additional support, looking at what support resources are available and what options are out there for me to be able to address that. So that's not a barrier to me being able to engage socially. Financially, I know a lot of people will think that that is a barrier as well. Oh, I can't go out with people, but you definitely can do free activities. Like, they don't have to cost. I know that's why a lot of people aren't in situations where they're even dating, because they're like, I can't afford to take anybody out on a date. But it is very important for us to be able to have social engagement. It doesn't always have to be romantic, but being able to do things with friends, and even in the dating piece, you have a budget. We talked about that fiscal responsibility. Like, let me look at my budget and see if there's some changes I want to make so I'm able to go out once a month. All right. But I want to be mindful when I'm going out. I don't have $50 to drop on the going out. And so I can be very strategic in how I'm navigating that. And yes, I know that there are absolutely people who have a certain expectation financially. And again, that may not be your tribe, right? And so instead of me trying to fit into people who are in places that will not accept me or will only accept me if I meet that criteria, let me find the people who can accept me in this space I'm in right now, right? As you grow and develop, you'll be able to see what other options are out there for you. But you also may realize, like, hey, that's not a person I want to be around anyway. Like, if you can't accept me when I'm not in a place that I have a lot of money to be able, extra money, to be able to go out and do things, and maybe you're not a person that I would want to have in my life when I do have that additional resource, right? So that, and again, that goes back to the boundary piece and the creating that list of things, your non-negotiables, like who you want to have in your life, who you don't want to have in your life, the things that you need, that people are going to be easily able to provide, right? So you do not have to force anyone, nor should you, to be in your life, right? So you want to make sure that you're choosing people who want to be there and have the capacity, the ability, the emotional development, the all of those things to be able to show up for you in that way. And that speaks to this piece of making your choices wisely. Whatever you're committing to, whoever you're deciding you want to try to engage and get to know, whatever events that you want to try to check out. Because I talk to people again about, okay, I'm going to try a social event a month or every couple of weeks, whatever that may be, as you're navigating these goals, and a therapist can help you, particularly if you're a little bit more shy and having some difficulty being able to engage socially, or you find yourself overcommitting and getting in relationships with people, whether that's friendships or work or romantic, where you feel like you're being used or taken advantage of, right? So you learning to navigate what your commitment level is going to be, who you're going to commit to, what kind of time you have. Um, that's going to be an important part of this social wellness journey, because I think for a lot of us, we are jumping into trying to have these social connections and we don't have these parameters set up. We haven't thought about, like, oh, okay, what would that look like? For instance, if I'm like, oh, I want to get back into dating, I'm at a position where I'm out of the grieving phase and I'm ready to engage again, then I hop on 20 sites, then I have all these people and I can't balance all of these people trying to keep up with all of these different sites. Or I join a walking group, or I get on a social media group for people who are interested in anime, and then again flooded with all of this stuff. Right? I didn't have time to. These people want you to engage several times a day. I was not at all expecting that. The walking group, there's a requirement that you have to walk so many times, or you're not going to be invited back to the group. Like all of these things. So find out all of that stuff first as you're trying to determine what will be a good fit for you. Community organization that you want to join, a church that you are thinking about becoming a member of. Make sure you do your research, go and visit, check it out, do a consultation so that you'll be able to understand what this organization group involves in terms of commitment. What are some of their values? Because again, that's the important piece that you want to make sure is in alignment. And so I can make sure that I'm making a good, sound decision with my social engagement. So, yes, we do want you to do people. And it is possible for you, even though people can be exhausting at times, it is possible for you to have that good balance in your life of social relationships. But it may be important for you to look at what you're currently doing, what's not working, and where you want to go, and make those adjustments in terms of figuring out what are some of the barriers and gaps to me getting me to where I want to be, and utilizing some of those. And that's not an exhaustive list. Those are just several strategies that can be helpful, but it may also be important for you to do your research and figure out, okay, like here's my particular challenge. Let me really focus on strategies that are going to help me with that. Okay. All right. Be well.